This is my first video with an actual script and proper video editing, so bear with me if it feels kind of bad. I also have a fever, so that's like super great. With the release of Indigo Park, I kind of wanted to go over some of the choices made in the game where I felt it was just kind of bad, and also kind of go over how I would rework some of the segments in the game, including the mascots' designs, the monster designs. The mascots themselves are actually pretty cool. Spoiler warning for anybody who hasn't played the game yet. Now, mascot horror is a genre that's all about mascots turned horror. That's it. That's literally the premise. Sure, some games might add some narrative, like a greedy company experimenting on kids, some guy trying to become immortal, or the big corporation starts using shady tech, which, has a ghost or virus in it. Now all the mascots are evil, and now they're killing everybody. Some games also just shamelessly slap the character into a scary environment and then call it a day. Yeah, at its most bare, the genre is really just about taking the innocence of childlike wonder that is often connected to marketable characters, and twisting it into something unnerving. Five Nights at Freddy's did this by playing to how creepy animatronics really are. Poppy's Playtime did this by taking childhood toys that people would have nostalgia for and making them scary. And honestly, Garden of Banban kind of deserves its own video for how deep and intricate the lore can get, how well designed some of the levels are, how the characters are just so peak. It's all peak. Indigo Park is another mascot horror game that released recently, and up to the date of its release, I heard a lot of buzz around it regarding how it would break the mold of the mascot horror genre and do something different. However, upon release and after trying it out myself, I'm honestly just disappointed, since it really doesn't do anything new or different. Rambly honestly feels like the main selling point of the game, and this becomes an issue when your AI guide overshadows literally every other aspect of your game. For some context, prior to this game, the developer Unique Geese also worked on Banban Reincarnated, which is a step up from the dirt floor that is Garden of Banban. It fleshed out some of the levels of the game, added atmosphere that made the game a little unsettling, and completely reworked Opila's section so that it wasn't just a random platform runner. Seriously, what the hell was this? My favorite part of the game is the egg collecting minigame in the play area section, where you have limited visibility and all you can really see ahead of you is your vague path and Opila's glowing eyes. This is the kind of energy I thought would get carried over in a Molly section of the game, and you can even see that the devs did attempt this, but the section still kind of falls flat. Molly's chase scene in Indigo Park just does not hold up. We'll come back to this point later, but I just wanted to point this out because Reincarnated is such a big step up from base Garden of Banban, and by reworking a bad game into something that's really decent, you'd think the developer would take a few notes and make sure their own original game wouldn't fall into the same holes. But yeah, no, Indigo Park still does. Like I mentioned before, it's not bad, it's just, there's still holes. Very big, obvious holes. First things first, Indigo Park is still an indie game made by a very small group of devs. Some of these devs don't have any prior experience with horror games. In its current beta, it's bound to have a few flaws, and just as Bendy and the Ink Machine eventually reiterated on its previous chapters, I'm sure the devs of Indigo Park will also come back to make changes and improve past chapters. This is especially helpful now since the game is currently free, which means more people have access to the game, and as such, the developers have way more reviews that they can take notes from. This way, the proper paid version of the first chapter can be a finalized, reincarnated version of its predecessor that fixes all its past issues and even adds even more gameplay. I said even twice, I'm gonna kill. Now, starting with the good, the characters are fleshed out. Very much so compared to pretty much every other mascot horror game I've seen. You can really feel that this is a park that people, and especially young children, would remember fondly, and I think that adds so much to the immersion. Ramley himself is a very interesting and fun guide character, and it's honestly refreshing to see a character like him in the mascot horror genre. He's got a charming and realistic sort of personality to him, his comedic timing is pretty great, and all around he's definitely the highlight of the game. But it sometimes feels like he carries the whole game. His endgame section is also kind of weird with how he just glosses over the dead bird head in the room, especially considering that's supposed to be his best friend's head. But that might be for lore purposes, I don't know. In terms of optimization, I have some experience with Unreal Engine and game dev, and so I can kind of understand where and how the game might be unoptimized or have bugs. Even when optimization is revisited, it might be better for the game to just drop the whole realism that it seems to be going for. Seriously, why do all mascot horror games try to go for realism? It contrasts the mascots so much, and even if it makes them look realistic, I'm not 100% terrified by that. Having a visual style will help the game immensely. It adds a visual flair to the game that makes it recognizable, and it might even work in favor of the optimization because the assets are completely in your control. You can control how many polygons are there, how much detail everything has. Everything's in your control. Actually, I think Unigis mentioned this in his reaction to the GT livestream. Having a visual style also would not restrict the designs of the mascots, and to better illustrate this, I went ahead and made some rough outlines of what the mascots could look like in a future update. When it comes to Lloyd, there seems to be an underlying story between him and Rambly, wherein Rambly hurts Lloyd somehow. I think this is talking about a monster Rambly that eventually hurts Lloyd, which we might eventually meet in the later chapters. Who knows? He might reveal himself to be, the man behind everything, the one that shut down the park, the one that killed everybody, the man behind the slaughter. Now, we could portray the damage done visually by having Lloyd be this sickly and lank figure of a malnourished lion. Basically, he looks like he's practically dragging his lower half behind him. I personally think this could work since we're introduced to Lloyd in a very energetic and visually impressive style. The first time we ever see him, he's got very bright colors and he's got a more upper triangular design. So, with the in game monster counterpart, we could contrast that completely with a dark, basically dying lump of an actual animal. And honestly, I just think that would help the segment where you get the keys just become that much more scarier. I also wanted to take this opportunity to talk about the level design of Lloyd's section. There's nothing. I've literally seen more gameplay on those shitty mobile ads than I have in this specific section of the game. No offense to Unigis, I am working in game dev, so I can understand how easy it is to sort of overscope yourself or underestimate just how long certain sections will take. But in its current beta, Lloyd's theater section has little to no actual gameplay. All his jump scares are scripted, and for the most part, the objective is literally to run in, grab some keys, and leave. There's no puzzles, there's no challenges. You'd think that once you grab the keys, Lloyd would start hunting you, and that's what the game kind of wants you to think because they have his feet stumping outside. That's what the game wants you to think because they have his feet thumping outside. But there's nothing. He just does not show up until the scripted jump scare. They could have added moments where you have to turn around just in time to catch Lloyd sneaking up on you, kind of playing into how a lion hunts people. And honestly, this section would have allowed the devs to play more into the fear of having an actual literal lion chase you, since most people are subconsciously afraid of lions. I think the contrast would work pretty well if they played into it more. With my design, the sneak mechanic could be further enhanced and could be made even more disturbing by having Lloyd sneak up on you from above the boxes, considering that his lank figure makes him even taller. This would mean that the player would have to look in almost every single direction, including up, to catch him in the act. The next design I want to talk about is Molly's. The first thing I thought of when it came to her was to lean into a sort of velociraptor like structure. I personally don't like the chase scene. I can see what they were trying to do with it, but it feels way too derivative of Poppy Playtime. Though, I guess there's not really much you can innovate with a chase scene. It's just a chase scene. It's not like Poppy Playtime invented it. I don't know. Maybe it's because the animation of her is just her walking towards you. Which is, like I said, having her stalk the halls with a sort of animalistic movement where she's lower to the ground spreading her wings and tail feathers and chasing you with much wider strokes. That could add some visual flair to the chase scene compared to just Big Bird walking towards you. I don't know, I feel like they just didn't make her animalistic enough. As per the lore, it's been 8 years. She's probably been starving for years now, but there's no real visual indicator of it in her movement. Now, for my personal design, I went for a more rotting look, mainly because Molly dies at the end of the chapter anyways. Design wise, I think it's alright considering how the devs are fine with gore and blood, so I don't see why they wouldn't try to lean into that a bit more, with her exposing some flesh. In terms of the chase scene, when I see the death screen for Molly, I'm immediately reminded of the segments in both Indigo Park and Ban Ban, where the birds are seen in the distance of the already claustrophobic tubes. Continuing on from my point in the first section of the video, since Molly can apparently repeat phrases and we've so far been led to follow Rambley's voice since it's the only one we can really trust, the game could have offered a chase sequence that involves finding a way out of the play place tubes while being chased by Molly, who is also shouting Rambley's voice lines to misguide and lure you, all while Rambley himself is trying to direct you to the exit. They could have also just recorded some of the players' voice lines and have them be repeated back to the player just for the unnerving effect. There could also just be a small distinction between the voices that keen players could keep an eye out for. In general, I just feel that Molly's ability to mimic voice lines is very underused, and I'm hoping it gets used better in the future updates. Plus, the fact that they mention it in the death screen, I feel like there was going to be a mechanic used for it. I feel like that was the original plan, and it was just too hard to implement, or maybe they needed more time to implement it. I don't know. The fact that they mention it just, it seems like it'd be useful. This would also work well with the claustrophobic environment of the tubes and could even lead to some really cool moments like the player passing by a small window section, only for Molly to jump from one side of the play place to the player's side, thus initiating the chase sequence as she breaks through the plastic film, giving you a sort of head start. I think another thing that bugs me about Molly's section is the environment. Like, why is there a random puzzle section that opens a metal door in a kid's play place? What parent sees this and goes, yeah, this is fine. Again, this is the beta, so these could also just be the bones for what the puzzles will be like, but I really hope they can make these sections feel more logical, which is actually something Ban Ban Reincarnated did. I'm pretty sure Unigi's mentioned how he wanted the sections to make more sense in a kindergarten environment. It's why I kind of wholeheartedly believe everything in this game is just a current placeholder, so I don't think we should be too critical about it, but we should still point it out. This is also an issue I see in so many other mascot horror games where the puzzle and the environment just have no rhyme or reason to exist with each other. I also wanted to take a moment to talk about Finley's design. Out of all the designs in the game, his feels the most like an actual placeholder, since it barely even looks like him and there's really no standout features to the design. The eyes are literally white. I know you're not supposed to see them, which is why I think they just put this here as a placeholder. They might update it, I don't know. Considering how the player character themselves are scared of Finley due to his size, the devs could have kind of played into this. Oh wait, I guess since he hasn't been added yet, the devs could eventually play into this by adding a few more grotesque or uncanny features, like maybe giving him the ability to extend his jaws in an extremely unnatural way, sort of like a pelican eel. I don't know why this exists, but I'm scared. This would not only make him more unsettling, but psychologically it tricks the player into viewing Finley as a much larger creature than he actually is. The main feeling I would try to invoke with any of Finley's sections in the next chapter would be something like the Leviathans in Subnautica, these hulking massive creatures that are almost barely visible in the ocean despite their size. I think there's enough videos discussing how the Reaper Leviathan is such a scary monster, so I'm not going to cover it. Also because I haven't played Subnautica myself, but from the clips alone you can kind of tell Subnautica is a horror game every single time you run into a Reaper or any Leviathan. With that, I guess we've reached the end of the video. I hope I wasn't too cynical in this video. I really do understand the struggles of game dev, especially overscoping and overestimating how much you can do in a certain amount of time. And I also understand that the game, as it is in its beta. And it's also free, so you're not really losing anything. But yes, as it currently stands, I think the game is purely in the bones of its development. I'm pretty sure everything is subject to change. I just wanted to point all these things out because I didn't see anybody else pointing them out. I don't know, people just seem to love Rambly, and that's enough for them to, I don't know, just overlook everything else about the game. I really do hope Chapter 2 builds off of the current state of the game and delivers something that really does differentiate Indigo Park from other mascot horror. Rambly's already such a good start to that, but I really feel like they should do more to differentiate themselves. Also, considering how early into development the game is, if the devs are still looking to hire people, I know a certain someone who can help out with concepts. Plus, he has some ZBrush sculpting skills, he knows about Maya modeling, substance paint texturing, and some pretty basic Unreal Engine skills. Oh, hey, there he is. Oh, wow. It's me.